Okay, so here's kind of some of the equipment that we use here. This is a dehumidifier. So what this is gonna do is gonna pull the moisture out of the air and condenses it back into a liquid. This line here goes to a drain. So this will automatically pump out any water that is collected from the air. And then down on the other side here, this is a vent that blows out hot, dry air. So what that does, obviously, you got a high humidity coming in the top, you got a low humidity coming out of the bottom. So that kind of dries the air. It doesn't quite dry the materials. You can't just put this in a room, turn it on and expect it all to dry. You kind of have to have some air movers, which is what we got over here. A couple different types here. This is called a centrifugal air mover. Some of us call them a snail. But this is more of a concentrated drying air mover here. So you kind of put it up against the wall. That's gonna kind of focus the air a little bit more down towards the bottom, not so much, going up a higher level. So that's one of them. These ones you can kind of angle. Say you have a wall here that's wet, 8 feet up, you can angle it at the wall, dry out that wall. You can also put them up, so if you have wet ceilings, you're getting air movement directly on that ceiling. It's more of like I said, a focused kind of air mover here. The next one we have here, this is our axial air mover. What this is gonna do is give you a lot more CFM, so a lot more air moving through it. It's a lot bigger fan, got a lot stronger kind of motor on it. So these are not really for directing on one area. You put them along the wall and they'll kind of dry a broad area. So if you have, like you have here, carpet, and then we got some drywall wet here, it's just gonna put out a lot of air movement, get those materials drying. And these kick up the moisture from the wet materials, which goes into the air, and that's where the dehumidifier catches the humidity or the moisture out of the air, turns it into hot, dry air like I was explaining earlier. So that's kind of a simple process of how we dry, your typical clean water loss. Yeah. Okay, so what we have here is the hygrometer that we talked about a little bit earlier. I just kind of want to show you how these work. So when we get there for our monitors, we turn these on. We put it on the top because that's going to be your affected air, the air you're trying to dry out. So we turn it on, kind of let these numbers level out a little bit. You can see here we got about 73 degrees, 46 relative humidity, 47. So what we'll do is we'll go down to the bottom, the output here, see how much moisture we're really pulling out of the air, and show you kind of the difference of what we have. You see here we're kind of really changing rapidly on our numbers here. Temperature's going up, your RH is going down, so that means this dehumidifier is working really well, pulling out a lot of moisture. We're at 90 degrees compared to the 70, 72 at the top there. Now we're down to 22 RH, which is your relative humidity. So we're pulling a lot of moisture out of the air with this piece of equipment right now, and it's working well. So it's definitely going to dry out a lot faster when you have a machine that's working that well, getting all the moisture out of the air. Like I said, this doesn't dry any materials. It just dries out the air that we make in the environment. Fans kick up the moisture in the air. This grabs it. Obviously, you can see the difference between the humidity levels. So we're making a real hot, dry climate to get all those moisture out of the materials that we have. So that's kind of how these work. This one also has kind of an added feature, which is an IR temperature sensor. So what we do is we hit this button here. You can see the surface temperature, your air depression there, surface temp difference. So we can kind of put it, you know, down here. It's got a laser. It'll tell me, you know, that drywall there is about 66 degrees. So what I could do is add a little bit more heat if I need to get that a little bit warmer, so we're getting a better dry. Obviously with moisture or water molecules, the hotter they are, the faster they move, the more they want to go to dry air. So once you get that temperature up a little bit more, your dehumidifier is going to help with that. Obviously it's pushing out about 80 degrees, so that'll warm up the room a lot faster. This is kind of a day one setup, so we come back the next day. We read our temperatures on our materials. I'd expect it to be up around 75, almost 80. It takes a little bit of time to get the environment set to where we need, but once we get it there, it'll dry out really fast, and we'll have a real quick dry out.
All right, so after we get done, you know, doing the extreme extractor, sometimes we're gonna come up where we're gonna have some areas where it's wet on top of the drywall that we just can't get to. You know, sometimes it's above the, you know, cove base or baseboards. And so another tool that we use, it's called the Injected Dry System here. As you can see, we have a midget is what we call it here. But what we have is we have an air in and we have an air out. Now we can use this two different ways. We can use this either as drying out hardwood floor systems, or we can use it to go ahead and use it as a wall dry system to dry out wall cavities with insulation in it. So what we're doing here first is we sort of have it split up into both right now. So when we're doing a wall dry system, as you can see here, we have the ports in. What we do is we'll come in, we'll take a drill bit, we're gonna drill little pilot holes for these adapters. Now what you can see on these adapters is that there's holes on both sides. So where we're gonna place that in there, we're gonna have air shooting up, shooting down, or we can turn it to the side, we can have it going left, we can have it going right, and then we can have it set in multiple ways that we can go ahead and dry out behind that wall cavity. So once we get done drilling out the pilot holes, we'll hook up our hose here that has attachments on that we'll stick the tubing on. It's gonna go into the machine, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna set everything up to air out. So we're gonna have all the air coming out of the system and pushing into the wall dry system. So basically what's gonna happen is we have a filter there that's gonna collect all that heat as well. It's gonna help force hot, dry air on the backside of the cavity and help dry out, you know, these necessary spots that we just can't get to with air mover or dehumidification process, that we're just gonna use that wall dry system to get behind there. Now, if we're not drying out the wall dry, then we're coming in with hardwoods. We're gonna normally have your, fridge supply line. We're gonna have a dishwasher supply line, anything like that that's gonna leak in the kitchen. There's gonna be some type of hardwood flooring. So what we do is we have a mat here, and this mat is basically gonna lay wherever our affected floor is at. We're gonna lay it right on top of it. And what we're gonna do is this will get about 3-foot radius around the floor mat. So what we'll do is we'll have a mat here. Normally, generally, we put another mat maybe, a couple inches away from that, so on and so forth. And what that's gonna do is on hardwood flooring, what we have is there's flutes that are underneath the hardwood flooring, and that's basically gonna pull out some of that moisture through the flutes, out through the butt joints, and it's gonna be able to suck it into this mat basically and go through the system. Now, we also have a filtration box that'll catch some of the water if we need to, if we still have a good amount of water that's in there that we can't all extract out as much as possible. We'll have a filter box that'll collect some of that water, so that way we're not just throwing water straight into the Injected Dry System. So basically, once we turn this on, this floor mat's gonna act like a suction cup, and it's gonna just suck itself to the hardwood flooring, and that's when it's gonna start that process of pulling all that, fluid, all that water. It's nice and hot as well, because we're gonna have, the heat with the dehumidifiers as well, and that's where we're really gonna get everything to where, sometimes the flooring is cupped, it's buckled, warped, however it may be. As long as we can get there as quickly as possible, then we can go ahead and save that hardwood flooring to get it down as level as we can, so that way after everything's done, it's just gonna be a nice sand and stain, and get the flooring back without having to remove the hardwood flooring.
Okay, so another piece of equipment we use here, this is a HEPA filter air scrubber. What this does is basically clean the air. We do a lot of mold jobs, so you obviously don't want that floating around. So we'll set up this. You got an outtake here, you got your intake here. You pull the cap off, fire it up. What it does is it's got 3 different filters in here. It's 3-stage. So you got kind of your pre-filter here. Right behind that is a pleated filter that kind of catches a little bit of the smaller particles that this misses. And then it's also got a HEPA filter in here that's about that wide. And that'll focus down or that will filter down to 0.03 microns, I believe is what it is. Mold spores are 0.05 microns. So pretty much anything that's gonna be floating in the air that could be a hazard to us or the homeowners, this will filter it out, catch it all here. When we get done, you know, before you shut off the machine, we cap this so it keeps all the contaminants inside for when we're moving out of affected areas, things like that. We can also kind of regulate our pressure in our contained rooms or our environment. We could put some ducting on this, duct it out a window, which causes negative pressure. So when you open a door or a Z-flap or a containment, it's sucking the air in so nothing can get out of the contained area. So we don't contaminate, the rest of the house or the building or whatever we're working in. We can also put these in for, people who have deficient immune systems or some medical problems, asthma, COPD, things like that. We do a health questionnaire at the beginning of the job, kind of see if anybody's got any health problems. If we do, we'll put this in there. This will clean out all the air, just make it safe for everybody to be in that environment and make sure that nobody's having any adverse effects from any water or mold or sewage or contaminants that could be in the building.